And now I have to see if it worked.
I'm assuming you have both Facebook and you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have them up. Did not have them up. Okay, so it's working on YouTube. Good.
Oh, I see myself.
Now the question is, did it go to the right place?
On YouTube?
I don't think it went to the right place on Facebook. It went to the group. It just didn't. Sorry, if you're watching this later, it's you can skip forward a little bit. I mean, it's live in the group. It did what I was hoping it wouldn't do.
It didn't go to the event though.
It didn't go to the event. So if I go to the event here, actually, I think I know how to fix it. If people will bear with me for a second. Okay, so I'm just going to put it here in the event so people can just link over to it, like just go to the live event, or not in the front, not to the live event, go to the live video. I got a pop-up while I was in the event. Oh, Lisa says, your sister. Okay, maybe it's working.
Oh.
Maybe.
Hi, Lisa.
I mean, obviously you can see us, right, Lisa, and everybody else. I don't have my normal dashboard when I'm in this mode, so this could be kind of interesting. Happening now. Live video. Where's the live video? Yeah. Okay. Well, very professional operation here, obviously.
Well, I think every time you try something new, there's bound to be a little bit of a
it's true
hiccup. So.
Okay. So we have two options here. We can bounce out and do it the other way, which I can do, or I possibly can make this work, but there might be two streams. So give me a second, and I think I can get this dialed in. But thanks for joining, Maija. I really appreciate you coming on. And let me see here. Oh, there's the URL. There's the key. Okay, I think I can get this figured out. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Totally. I actually got a couple people saying, "Hey, you should talk to Maija."
I will do my best. I know you've had some very interesting folks on already, so I've really enjoyed hearing the stories that everyone else has shared. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's it's been really fun. But I feel like there's just so many stories that can be told during this.
So many.
Like,
I'm looking forward to many more. Yeah.
Really interesting things. I mean, I have a whole gamut of people that have done so many different things. I haven't even talked to everybody, go live now. It looks like it's actually working potentially. So okay, it is now live in the event as well. So we may actually have two places to go watch it in the group. I don't know. We'll see. It's this is a whole new world here where I'm trying something different, and it didn't really work as well as I expected it to. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. Looks like it's kind of working. So I do need to go and make sure I have comments open so I don't. Just for so I'm Jamin Holmgren. Of course, if you've watched these before, I'm doing interviews with different people who are connected to the ALC and the group. I want to encourage people to ask questions. So we have a few people who have said hi. Of course, Lisa, your sister. We have Judy Kinnanen says hi, Maija. And I will be paying attention to chat, but it is in two different places now. So could be interesting to try to keep up with it. So I apologize in advance if I miss your comment, but thanks so much, Maija, for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So let's start with, I do have a little bit of a cough. I'm going to try to not have it affect things too much. I want to start with the Whose Girl Are You segment. Before I do that, I do want to say that you are my cousin. You're my first cousin. And so, of course, there's a lot of relatives out there, but from the Holmgren side. But yeah, whose girl are you?
So yeah, my mom and dad are Stan and Julie Lampinen. I think many of you all know them. So my maternal grandparents would be Kelly and Harriet Holmgren, which Jamin and I have in common. And then my paternal grandparents are Bob and Ruth Lampinen from Michigan.
Perfect. And you grew up near Seattle.
Yes. So actually I have three siblings. So my sister Lisa is here, and then my brother Hans Lampinen, and then JP Lampinen. And so we all grew up north of Seattle. We all grew up about 25 miles north of Seattle in the town of Snohomish, Washington, with a lot of the other folks from the Seattle ALC, the Impelas, some of the Questads, and the Salines. So we had quite a community there in the Snohomish River Valley for a while. And then I've now moved to Marysville, Washington. So I'm about maybe 15 miles north of where I grew up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that whole area right there, even though I grew up like going up there, I know, kind of the vague, like, I know, okay, something's north of Seattle or east or west or south. But yeah, I don't have a handle on exactly where things are in relation to each other very well. Right. I still rely on Google Maps to get to wherever you all are.
Well, I think we all do anymore because of traffic. It's easier to, have it reroute you somewhere if traffic's a little bad in one area. So yeah,
totally. Hey, Linda, I see you there. Obviously you grew up in that area, the Seattle Apostolic Lutheran Church. Is that still one of those things where are you folks thinking about moving the church at some point? Because it is kind of like way further south of pretty much everybody, right?
Where everyone lives. Yeah, there's a few folks who still live close to the Seattle church. It's in Shoreline, Washington. That has been a discussion that's been on the table on and off over the years. It's currently shelved for the moment.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen if we do find affordable land north and that we are able to build, or a building that we're able to convert. But at this point, it's still in Shoreline, Washington.
Yeah. So everybody,
since like the mid 70s, I think.
Yeah. That classic church, the only one I remember. Of course, I was born in early 80s. That definitely was something we drove up there multiple times per year, every year, and went up there, seeing all of you folks up there. Very cool. So that's the Whose Girl Are You side of things, and I thought it would be really cool to have you on because you do some kind of interesting things. Working for the Port of Everett, Washington, which is how far from you? Like is that how much of a commute?
For my commute, it's 10-15 minutes.
Oh, right there. Then.
Unless traffic's bad, marine traffic. I have a couple bridges I have to go over
that
have marine traffic. So if marine traffic's bad, then it could add another 10-15 minutes. But it's a really easy commute.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to really quickly, just to orient people, I'm going to bring up a Google map just so that people can kind of like get a sense for where we're talking about here. So I'm going to hit share screen, and here we go. So I live down here, down by Portland. And then if you go up north through Olympia, Tacoma, Seattle, this is like horrible traffic area. And you get further north, then you get to Everett. And Everett is kind of like in this little area right here. And you said you're in Marysville, right? So
I am
up
in
that
Marysville.
corner.
I'm in South Marysville, correct?
Yeah, so it's right there. But this whole area here is like a giant. It's the Puget Sound, and it's like water everywhere.
There's definitely a lot of water, and not only that, if you pull it out a little bit for the city of Everett, or that, but you can notice when you kind of go through the Strait of Juan de Fuca, which is by Victoria, there actually it's a little bit. Yeah,
let's see here.
There's actually no bridge.
Right here?
Yeah, right there. There's actually no bridges there. So in order to get to the Port of Everett and the Port of Seattle, there are no bridges. Unlike if you're going down into like the Port of San Francisco, you have to go under the Golden Gate Bridge. And so there's height restrictions and there's some other things. So that makes it really attractive to be shipping to our area.
Just ships can just come right through. I know there's there's ferries that go through, and a few years ago, we took off from Port Angeles and went up to Victoria, and we spent some time up in Victoria, Canada. But yeah, we went over. It was a ferry, and then ships come in here. We've got Port Townsend. My dad actually lived there for a while. Whidbey Island's kind of a famous island there, and there's a whole bunch of others. Seattle, of course, down here, and our grandma actually lived in Linwood for a while. But yeah, they come in, and the most kind of like accessible port is right here, and that's what you've been involved with, is the Port of Everett. We're going to get to that in a bit, but I just wanted to kind of orient people about what we're talking about in terms of the port and why that's kind of a big deal there. But what about your education? Like, did you go to college?
I did. I actually attended 2 years of community college and basically took business classes through that. So as I was going through high school, actually, I was taking a lot of business classes, and one of my business teachers came up to me and asked me if I was really interested in continuing and pursuing business. She had a job opportunity for me. So I was a junior in high school, the very first week of my junior year. She was my business teacher the year before in high school. And so she actually recommended me for a job at the superintendent's office for the Snohomish School District. And that gave me a really great opportunity to continue to do business type activities. And so then I went on and took an additional 2 years at Edmonds Community College. And then that whole time I worked for Snohomish School District. And after I graduated from college, I stayed at Snohomish School District. I ended up taking 2 part-time jobs there to make a full-time job. And so that's kind of how I continued in the business. It just actually kind of naturally migrated into that. So I took 2 years of community college. And then as I've grown in my career, I've taken a lot of professional development. I'm talking like 250, 300 hours a year of professional development, and received different certifications and really tried to work to continue to hone my skills. Jamin, you're muted. Hey, Jamin, you're muted.
I got to unmute before I talk, turns out.
Yeah, apparently.
Thanks for telling me.
No worries.
But yeah, like with any professional, occupation, things change over time, and you need to make sure that you're staying on top of things. There's so much, obviously, in my industry and technology, and but really in every industry. We're going to be talking about some of that stuff, but what made you decide to start working at the port, and then what was your primary job there?
Sure. I worked for the Snohomish School District for several years, and during that particular time, I ended up telling them, this is one of those cases of you recognize a problem, you bring it up, and you end up being the solution or taking on that particular solution. And so I had been working in their facilities department operations, handling risk management and a lot of capital projects and maintenance and that type of thing from an administrative perspective. And I recognized that they really needed someone in procurement. They needed, because we had nobody that handled procurement. There's I told him, I said, apparently there's a bunch of rules and regulations we have to follow.
Right.
And the state auditor actually is the one who brought it to my attention. And he was very kind and kind of showed me direction where I needed to go in state law and what I needed to read. And I said, well, this isn't my primary job, but I will definitely pass it on to our business manager, who then promptly created a procurement position and asked me to apply for it. And so I really didn't want to. It sounded boring, but I did. Yeah. I did. And I got to tell you, it was totally God's leading. He's been there all along, helping me through each one of these transitions. So while I was at the school district, I mean, they didn't have a procurement position, so I had to build that all out. They had no policies, no procedures, no forms, nothing. So I did all that. And then as I was really working my way through that, they ended up getting multiple $1 million worth of cuts in their budget. And normally school districts, when they get cuts from the legislature, it's for the next school year. This was retroactive back to the beginning of that school year. And so they were forced to lay off about a third of their administrative staff, of which was my position, my entire department. Then at that point, I was managing emergency preparedness and safety, and I was handling all of the community use of buildings and all of that. And they laid off myself and then a bunch of other people, and we had to redistribute. And they actually asked me to move over to human resources and said, hey, we don't want to lose you. And so I just assumed that's the way that God wants me to go. It's just, it just kind of falls in line. And I lasted 2 days. I absolutely hated it. And so I really prayed about it. I talked to people over the weekend. This was a Friday when I went home. I literally was crying, thinking, this is not going to work. Is this a learning curve or is this not? And I realized I'd actually never prayed about taking that particular position. I just assumed. And I felt like God was telling me, take a step out, trust me. And so I went in on Monday morning and I handed in my resignation. And they kept me on for another month to try and close out a bunch of things and transition. But then I just left without a plan. And this was during 2011 when everyone else in the world was looking for work, trying to come out of that. And so it took me 6 months to find a job at the Port of Everett. But that was kind of one of those things where the connections that I made while I was working at the school district, I ended up becoming the president of the Washington Association of School Business Officials Procurement Committee. And as that, I needed to pull a lot of speakers and a lot of professional development people together to train. And one of the individuals that I had met during that, I became good friends with. He was good friends with the boss that I ended up with at the Port of Everett. He had asked my friend Mike, do you know anybody in procurement who's looking for a job? And Mike said, absolutely. And in fact,
that's cool.
Mike ended up calling my mom while I was back at the conventions in the Copper Country. And my mom's like, can I give this guy your phone number? And I'm like, yeah, you can. And so I actually never applied at the Port of Everett. They called me.
Okay.
I did a phone interview with them. And then I went and did an in-person interview, and it just, I was interviewing them at the same time. I had a pretty definite decision. I did not want to be in an entity that was very siloed. I wanted to be in an entity that was very encompassing, that allowed me to interact with everybody. And that was very much the culture at the Port of Everett. And so I ended up getting the position, and I guess the rest is history.
Well, we're going to be talking about some of the stuff you've done in procurement there, but like I assume like nobody probably, they're like 16 years old and someone's like, hey, what do you want to do for your living? They're probably not like procurement manager. Like that's probably not the thing that they point out. But as you've said, like it's actually been really cool. There's actually been a lot to it. So explain what a procurement, if I can even say it, manager even does. Like, what is it?
Right. So that's going to vary from entity to entity. If you're in a really large entity, you're actually just managing all the solicitations that come in. So what procurement really does is it helps the entity that they're in achieve their strategic initiatives and achieve their mission by helping them get what they need to do their jobs.
Right.
Whether it's goods or services like engineering services, other consulting services, IT services, or if it's construction and other types of projects. And so a lot of times procurement entities, it really just work with all of the end users within their jurisdiction. to get things done. If you're working with the police department, you're buying police cars and that. So at the port though, it's a little bit different, and that might be just because I've made it a little bit different. I tend to be the bottom of the funnel, I say, and things kind of slide downhill. And so it varies. But for me, what it is it's working with each one of our 3 business lines. We have a seaport, we have a development line, business line, and we have a marina. And it's working with each one of them to really drive their mission forward. If they're needing equipment, I'm working with them side by side to understand what their equipment needs are, what their duty cycles are. Does it need to be electric? Does it need to be a combustible engine? And we literally pull that together and put together a solicitation. So public procurement is intended to be an open and transparent process. Everybody should
because
have
we're talking
access.
We're talking government, we're
monies.
talking like taxpayer money. So you have to be pretty open about it.
We do. So we need transparent processes. It needs to be a competition that everyone has access to bid on.
Right.
And so what that means though, is that you have to write some pretty tight specifications. And so that's what I do is I work with them. So that's sometimes the interesting and somewhat boring part of your job is just really trying to pull that together and really think through how this is all going to interplay and make sure that you're minimizing risk for contractors as well as you as a public entity. So it's really coming alongside them and doing that. It's just really there's some really cool things because you get to touch everything within an entity. Right. You're working with the maintenance crews as they're looking and buying tires. I mean, the tires that we buy for some of our equipment are $8,000 a piece. Yeah. So anything we can do to minimize the cost of that, because you can imagine how many tires we go through on these big equipment. And so that, or if we're working with our public relations department and we're doing holiday like lighting decor and like these really cool artistic displays for holiday events, or if it's, we put rail, we build wharves. There's, and so I'm involved in every aspect of that. Yeah. From a smaller level, I don't always manage obviously those projects. And then if it's software implementations, it's buying, it's understanding what the needs are for the software, and then working alongside the user department to get it implemented. And then I hand it over to them so that they can walk away and use it. So it's a variety. It's a variety every day.
You're touching kind of almost everything to some degree, and you have to talk to everybody to see what they need. That totally makes sense. Nancy Jarvie says hello, by the way. So I think that I would like to show some photos, because I think that like we can talk about this stuff, but it would be it's important, I think, to get a sense of scale of the stuff you're dealing with, because we're not talking about necessarily, when you say buying tires, I mean, like these are big or very
they're taller than me, and I'm 5'6". So
exactly. So like almost like when you're dealing with a giant ocean going ship and a port that it has to come into and get unloaded and loaded, everything's big, everything. And so that's one of the things you sent over, a bunch of photos, and that's one of the things I noticed. So I'm gonna share my screen. Excuse me. And we're gonna take a few. Now these may not be in order, so bear with me. I just kind of dumped them all into a folder, but we're gonna take a look at this.
I don't know that I sent them in order. It's my dad and I.
Yep, that's your dad, Stan Lampinen. Yes. And you, and a giant structure behind. Whoops! Whoa, I went way too far. Behind you, and what is that?
Those are actually 2 separate cranes. And so this actually is a project. It was kind of cool that my dad was able to come down. This was a day that we had been working for a while. We acquired 2 cranes. So used cranes of this size, these are called ship-to-shore cranes. Cranes of this size can cost anywhere between $10 million to $20 million a piece. And we knew that we needed to get additional cranes. Our current cranes were a little bit smaller, and we wanted to be able to expand to what's called a post-Panamax crane. That's what these are. They'll take ships that are considered post-Panamax. And I think I sent you a list, a drawing of what those ships kind of look like. But we actually, we could not afford brand new ships. And so what I did was we had been negotiating with a local port for some of their used cranes, and that negotiations fell through. They had a customer who wanted to use those cranes. So I did a nationwide call for used cranes to all the maritime ports. And we ended up negotiating with the Port of Los Angeles. Well, actually Evergreen terminals, as you see, those cranes have the word Evergreen.
Right.
On them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see Evergreen on the side of like ships and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So Evergreen is a shipping company, and they operate one of the terminals down at the Port of Los Angeles.
Right.
And the Port of Los Angeles owns the terminal, but it needed to be upgraded because they were trying to get for bigger ships. Because that's been the trend, bigger and bigger and bigger ships, which we can talk about a little bit later in some of these supply chain snafus.
Right.
But
I want to ask you about that.
With that said, these cranes were actually too small for them.
Okay.
And so for us, these were actually bigger. And so we negotiated, I bought these for $1 a piece, believe it or not.
Wait, what?
But it is $1 a piece, each one of them.
I could have bought them. I could have afforded that.
You could have. However, for them to disassemble and tear these down, it would have been about a $3 to $4 million expenditure.
Wow.
Per crane.
So
for them, it was a deal, right?
Yeah.
But it also cost me a lot of money to get them up and get them operational. So while I paid $1 a crane, by the time I put them into operation, it was $8 million.
Okay.
So
but still a good deal considering the size of those things. And yeah.
So in this particular one, we negotiated, we ended up bringing a maritime or a heavy lift company into the picture, who had a maritime engineer who had to we had to figure out how to get them from LA up to Everett. And most obviously it's going to be an open ocean tow.
Sure.
And which on a large barge. And these barges are ginormous. They're like over a football field long and wide.
I was going to, this is a totally dumb thing, but it's like, okay, what size of a crane do you need to load a crane?
Well,
I assume they disassemble it.
You drive them on, actually.
What?
Yeah. So you don't drive the crane, you lift the crane and you put an entire movie. It's like moving a whole house idea, where you put a row of dollies, or they call them bogies.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have it in any of the pictures that I sent you, but it's literally, I don't know if you can even scroll in.
Let me see if I can.
It's a crane moving system that's sat behind my dad. If you scroll over his shoulder. So
if I zoom in here?
If you zoom in there. So that's actually a crane moving structure. They actually
I see the
whole frame. And
tires.
do you see all the tires? And those are called bogies. And there was, I don't remember how many of them, but they actually, and then if you scroll over actually back to the left, under the word 5, you see that they've got an orange piece welded to the structure. And that's how they lift it. They actually they have an actual bar that comes out from underneath the structure and goes under that orange support, and it actually lifts the crane, and then they move the crane, and then they set it down.
No kidding.
Yeah, on rail. So that's what we had to do. We had to actually weld rail onto that barge, and then they had to design what the sea state might be for that particular voyage. And
what do you mean by
sea state? Meaning the waves and the wind and the storm conditions that might be expected during the time that we were moving it. And then you see the orange structures that are on the crane itself. Yeah. Those are actually not part of the crane. That is actually sea bracing.
So this is like reinforcement.
It's reinforcing it so that it doesn't torque during the voyage, which was really important, because we did hit a storm that we had to move 100 miles out sea.
Wow. Okay.
To avoid, because it was it wasn't structured, wasn't reinforced for that type of movement.
By the way, I'm just noticing details here. Is this where the operator of the train or crane would sit? Okay.
Yep, that is. Yeah.
So
and I've actually been in those. Yeah.
Okay. No kidding. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. Those are about 200 feet tall for perspective.
Yeah.
They're actually 215, I think, to the very tip top of the apex.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah. And then that firm also had to design fastening it to the barge. So they had to literally weld it to the barge and those structures are about 36 inches around. Those orange structures. So it was quite a project. So that is what's happening on this particular one. Is it had come up via ocean open tow. They'd removed all the sea fastening, which took, fastened it to the barge, put the moving system under the crane. And this is where we're actually bringing it from the barge onto land.
In Everett?
in Everett. And the
Yeah.
unique thing is this particular wharf is still under construction. So we had to work with the contractor who was finishing the strengthening of it to put all these plates and ballasts and everything so that we could bring these cranes across and then they could go back to work, because we needed to get them out of the way before LA tore theirs down and started strengthening their own walls.
Oh, I see. So it was sort of
my dad was
getting it there.
Yeah. So my dad was able to come down and join us for
that's
a
pretty
little
fun
while during that day.
That's really neat. Wow. Yeah. And these cranes are very important. And generally speaking, what you're loading and unloading is they'd be containers, right? To
a certain point, yes. Depending on so if you can't really see it there, but maybe on the next picture.
Next one. Okay. So
yeah,
this
so
is
there's a lot of
container
containers
ship.
There.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
Are these those two? It looks like evergreen.
Those are the two. Yep. That's after we brought them upland. We did a crane. I call it the crane's brains, but we did a control upgrade.
Okay.
Which was a couple $1 million to upgrade the controls. And then once the work was complete, we then hired another heavy lift company to lift them and move them and then attach them to the rail there.
Right. Okay.
And so now they're able to offload. And so
and they could like slide back and forth here.
They gantry back and forth. They're electric cranes.
Okay.
They're both. And the little blue ones in the back are also ship to shore cranes, the ones that are just on the terminal just north of where you're at.
Okay.
Those blue ones will reach about 12 containers across. Okay. And they're 40 long ton container cranes. The green ones, the significance of those is it reaches 18 containers across. So that allows us to get the bigger ships in. Oh, okay. And so that's a huge thing. We're the only.
It's really about the reach.
Ports. It's about the reach. Yeah. So we're one of the only ports on the West Coast that have this of our size that have this lifting capacity. Otherwise, it's the LA who have the huge ships and the huge cranes. And so for us to be able to take these other container ships and offload them has really helped with the supply chain issues on the West Coast. Do you ever have break bulk ships? Yes. The only reason I said that was to show off because I read a book about this. So I'm glad you did. Actually, the Port of Everett is not a container port. While we handle containers, it is not our specialty. Break bulk and bulk are our specialty. Okay. So we do a lot of oversized, overdimensional cargo, everything from yachts to compressor, like you've got, oh gosh, I just lost the word for it. Like pressurized vessels.
Oh yeah.
So like for the Cherry Point refinery, so they've got these huge vessels. Yeah. We do a lot of project cargo. So we actually have a good partnership with working with a lot of the folks in Alberta. But they're doing rock quarries and bridges. So those kind of components come over and then they're staged on the port. And then truckers obviously then come in or we put them on rail. We do a lot of wind energy too. So for everybody who sees the big wind turbines, the big blades, the blades come in individually. Okay. We also do I don't know if you've ever heard of Citizen M hotels, but they actually put 100% modular hotel rooms. So they come to us completely furnished, 100% ready. The pictures are on the wall and everything's ready. They actually take each individual hotel room and then they build it up and just kind of plug it all together and they've got a hotel. Wow. So it's just a random assortment of things that come through.
And just to go back to that, you have bulk, which would be things like liquids, grain, coal, something that kind of fill every cranny of a container. And then you have containers, which are just these shipping containers that are stacked together and they're all a standard size and you kind of can like put whatever you want inside them, but you stack them all in a and then break bulk is like kind of everything else. It's like
everything else.
Yeah. It's like stuff that won't fit in a box. Yeah. It's kind of a weird size. It's not liquid. It's not grain. It's not any of that. So yeah. I read a amazing book called The Box, and it talked about the development of the container box. And I've talked about it so many times that my son Cedric rolls his eyes whenever I mention it, but it's such a fascinating, I did not expect it to be as fascinating as it was. And literally containers sort of like changed the whole world in incredible ways.
They did. And then with the ease that they can move them now with the twist lock system, it just makes it so expeditious to be able to move containers. Yeah.
By the way, Becky Kopanen says, "Hey, Maija." My sister Meredith says, "Hey, Maija." And our aunt Jerry Lynn says hi, nephew and niece.
Hello.
So by the way, has anybody been noticing been having some, I'm getting notifications that I'm not getting like full stream. Is there any dropouts or anything like that happening? Please let me know in the comments if you're noticing any dropouts. I'm not sure exactly if it's happening or not, but we'll keep an eye on that. So yeah, fascinating stuff. There's other stuff going on here. Is there a naval base as well, or is this?
There is. If you continue,
Okay.
I don't think the picture shows it, but just
Yeah.
immediately to the left, you can kind of see a little bit of stuff right there on the left. That's all naval base. So that's
Naval up
Station
here.
Everett.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually that's the very tip top of that little cove is naval parking.
Okay.
But yeah, we actually sold that land to the Navy. The Navy utilized that land back in the World War II for shipbuilding, and then they left in the 50s. And then in the 80s, we sold the land to them because it's a naturally deep water port.
Right.
And in 1994, they opened up Naval Station Everett. So we have about 6 or 7 destroyers currently stationed there. It is a carrier port, but they do not have a carrier there. So they're supplementing with destroyers at the moment.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, here's another view. It looks like it's those evergreen ones again. There's a ship. It does not look like a container ship, or is it?
That's a good point. So this particular ship, so during COVID and during the backups, a lot of shippers started pivoting and using non-container ships to move containers because the influx of goods was just backing up. In addition, there was a lot of the shippers that were starting to reroute their smaller ships from the Asia Middle East to the Asia Pacific. Yeah. And so this is a particular one that's a multi-purpose ship. And if you notice, it's got its own little cranes. Those are called ship's gear. Okay. And
yeah. So, I was gonna ask about that. They have their own onboard cranes, basically.
They do. Some do and some don't. It really depends on their operations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Just checking on. We do have a YouTube question from my sister Kendra. What's the weirdest thing you've had to procure?
The weirdest thing at the school district or here?
I don't know. I guess she didn't specify.
Well, you can imagine at the school district, we had some unique things when I had to work with our science department. So
right.
I had to, I know this is probably a family function here, but I did have to buy bison testicles out of Montana for the science department as they were doing their experiments, and that has got to be like I just about died when I saw that definitely
takes the cake right there.
Yeah. And I thought, what? I don't even know where.
Yeah, how do you go about
something like this?
Sourcing something like that? Yeah,
I had to make quite a few phone calls. So that is definitely the weirdest thing.
Yeah. So it looks like the marina, and so the public, and that is part of the port as well.
It is. So we have what's called a balanced waterfront. So it's the working waterfront we were just looking at. That's what drives the economy in our area. I mean, I think it generates about $375 million worth of taxes and all of that come through. And then we have Naval Station Everett, and then right above Naval Station Everett, we still continue with our properties. So what we're seeing is a look from the hillside in Everett, overlooking our marina. We have a 2,300 slip marina. So this is our recreation side. And then you can see there's some orange building there is under construction. We're in the process of doing about a $570 million waterfront development. So all this used to be industrial mills, shingle mills, lumber mills. And when they went out of business, the port started buying up all the waterfront. And that's a big part of what ports are for, obviously, is to allow public access to the waterfront, because it used to be monopolized by the mills and that. And so we're redoing this. It's going to be, I guess they call it shabby chic. Or industrial chic. So it's really paying tribute. Our upland development is paying tribute to the mill workers of years ago. So we have roads called Millwright Loop and Chamfer Way, and then that. So this particular viewpoint where they're at is it looks like it's one of our concert series. So we do a lot of public activities too. We do concerts, and we have holiday events, and we have movies in the park. So sail and cinema. And so it's really trying to balance all the industrial stuff on the south that's going with giving people access to the waterfront.
That's really cool. Looks like we have
another view, our splash park.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And then it looks like part of the marina here, maybe a fishing boat or a little yacht or something. Going back to this, it looks like this is still during the move because the orange.
Yeah, that's the sea
reinforcement. Oh, so that was when it was like connected to the barge.
This is on the barge, correct?
Yes. Okay. Yeah,
and that tells you how big the barge is when you see that semi truck sitting there.
Right. Yeah, the truck's right here, and it's like, there's tons of room.
I showed you this one just to show the sheer size of that sea facing and sea fastening, because that guy is like 6'4", probably 350. That guy is huge.
Yeah, and he's up in this little corner here, which is like wow. Yeah. Another shot of it here.
Oh, this is what I was telling you. We're moving it across the wharf, and see how it's not complete. Yeah. So we had to do a lot of bridge plate, and it was a little.
That makes sense. Reinforcement there, and this is still being constructed.
Yeah, that's a crane rail beam.
Oh wow. Yep. More shots of that.
Waiting for the barge the tide to fall enough that we could actually. We had to roll them off right at and we only had a short amount of time to get them rolled off between tides.
Let's see here. Eileen wants to know what this is from Lisa, what the big green ball is in the event photo header. So let me go find that again here. Was it this one, or was I? Which one are we?
Oh no, I think it's the one that you posted for the advertisement, and that's a pressure vessel.
Oh, I think I actually you sent me. Maybe you didn't. I thought you maybe sent me that one. But it's a part of the event. Go ahead and let me know what that is.
Yeah. So that's actually a big pressure vessel. I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's Finnish, and I should. I think it's Forsilla. They're a company. They're a shipping company a company that's based out of Finland that does a lot of pressure vessels and a lot of greening of ships. And that is actually an LNG tank that's going to be put on one of the ships. So they're trying to convert from putting natural gas onto the ship. So they brought that. We called them the green pickles because they lasted all winter on our property, and so we just called them the green pickles. But those were huge. They were so heavy, and they were just I can't even tell you how long they were, but they were very, very large.
John Candle says working great on YouTube. Jerry Roberts says it's a little buffering. It sounds like we're making it work here. So let's go back to where we were. There's a nice shot of the cranes from the water there. With what looks like a tugboat or something.
This is the barge coming in.
Oh, that's when it was coming in. Oh, yeah,
that's when it was coming in via barge.
Yeah, and there's a couple actually. There's a pusher there.
There was an assist. Yeah, they have an assist tug as well. They have two assist tugs and then the main tug that brought it up.
And there's another shot.
You got lots of cranes. We love our cranes, if you couldn't tell.
Well, I mean, that was a big deal. And I think you were telling me right before we went live that this was it kind of like the biggest, like in terms of impact and project that you had at the port so far?
I think so. So this is a $57 million upgrade that we did at this terminal.
The wharf included.
And all the other infrastructures that we've done. And this came on live. So when we brought these in, then they were upland. We did the drive upgrades. Yeah. And then we moved them out. We moved them out and accepted them. And 3 months later, the shipping industry exploded, as we all know, with COVID. Right. And we could not have been better poised to start taking the ships that no one else could take.
That's amazing. So
we actually grew 400% in the last year with just the diversion cargo. So like a diversion cargo is cargo that was maybe originally slated for Vancouver, BC or Seattle that they're not able to take. Because we're poised to take it, they're able to redirect it to us. And
That's amazing.
So we go after that business, but it is also stuff that just sometimes just falls in your lap. So it has really, really helped. And that actually increased our container as well. And then we also, a lot of those containers are 53-foot containers, as you were talking about. A lot of them are 40 and they're standardized.
Yeah.
Seattle and Vancouver, they don't want them because it messes up their yards.
Oh, I suppose they're all set up for 40
containers. And these are 50.
Do you say 40 and 80?
40 and 50, 40. I don't think 80, just 40.
Just 40 foot. And then
these
there's
are
the 53.
Yeah.
Which
and then
I remember reading about in that book, and the whole war, there's like a war around the standardization and the sizes and stuff, and it never fully got resolved. So there's a lot of 40s, but also I think the 53 was about like putting them on a truck or something, or maybe a rail car or something.
A lot of these are going on trucks. So they're Amazon, they're Walmart, they're JB Hunt and Schneider are the ones that we're typically working with. And that's one of the things that happened during COVID is Costco started just instead of allowing their stuff to come over on ships with everybody else's, they just started hiring their own ships and bringing stuff in. And all of a sudden we found, Amazon was doing the same thing. Just we found them all on our doorstep, and Amazon just said, we have a distribution center just a few miles away. And they're like, we want to use you. And we said, absolutely, come on in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No kidding. I want to dive into in a bit. I want to dive into the supply chain issues in a bit. I want to quickly sneak through the rest of these. Looks like this is like, is it for dredging or something?
It is. Yeah. Dredging is one of our more challenging things that we do. We're at the mouth of the Snohomish River. So we get a lot of sediment that runs down.
Oh, just like silt coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. So our deep sea port, the shipping, not an issue. But it's our marina, and you can imagine your recreational boats. That's the last thing you need is to be able to beach it on your way in your marina. It's posed quite a challenge. It's something that we work with the Army Corps of Engineers on. They're in charge of dredging the Snohomish River Basin.
Okay,
and then we're required to do our own dredging, but it costs us millions and millions and millions of dollars to dredge. And so that's been one of the challenges that we've been dealing with, but it's actually, it's really fun. I've been able to get on a dredge barge and climb up in the operator's cab and just kind of see how things work. And that's just one of the little perks of the job. So
it's fun.
It's been fun. Yeah.
That is fun. Looks like this is after it was mounted and it's actually working on a container ship there.
Yes.
And then this is an overhead view of the marina. Looks like marina there. Yep. Makes sense. And there's like some sort of an island here. Yeah,
so that's Jetty Island. That's actually made out of dredge materials. Dredge sands.
Oh,
it's a wildlife. It's a wildlife / break bulk, if you will, for the Snohomish River that you're looking at. There's actually a lot of kiteboarding that goes on there. And then on the northern little marina basin there, you can kind of see a boat launch at the very top part of that. No, down further.
Down here.
Flats there. Yeah, that's a 13-lane boat launch. We do about 50,000 launches a year.
Wow. Okay.
And then we have a little ferry there that runs across to the island between July 4th and Labor Day, and families can take their kids over. There's a lot of shallow and warm water there, and it's one of the largest sandy beaches in the Puget Sound, and it's all dredge sands. And then there's a ton of there's a lot of seals and eagles and various other wildlife there.
Oh, that's really fun. Yeah. That's cool. I think that was it for the photos. I could look at these longer, but I want to talk about some stuff. Thanks for sending those over, by the way. Let me make sure that I've caught up with chat here. So Shane, my brother Shane is waving, and then Kendra says, you have so much specialized knowledge. How did you acquire it? Was there someone in your position formerly who trained you? Did you have a team of people there explaining things as you went?
No, not at all. And that's maybe why you learn things. If you have to learn them the hard way, you learn them and you learn them well. So when I took my first job in procurement at the school district, that was one of the things they asked me is they said, what are you going to do? You don't have procurement experience. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I know there's professional associations out there. I am going to join one of them and find a mentor. So, I had nobody at the school district who knew what I should be doing. I had to literally develop my own job description. So that's what I did as I joined a professional association, the Washington Association of School Business Officials, and found mentors. And then when I came to the port, I was in a similar situation. Nobody knew what I was supposed to do. They had previously had a procurement person, so I was able to build on what they did. But I had 2 memberships before, and the Institute for Public Procurement is who I spend a lot of time with. And I took a lot of classes from them on negotiation and how to write RFPs and all of that. And then, to be honest with you, I could not do my job without the internet. I just search, research, I read other people's requests for proposals and their bids and see, why did they ask that? And how did they do this? And I just try to learn from that. And then networking. I have a network of about 10,000 people across the nation that I can reach out to every day, any day, and say, hey, I need to get a request for information out for a private developer. Have you ever done this before? And then I can get samples from them on whatever it is. Or maybe we're dealing with material escalation clauses because of what's been going on in the last year. The chatter between my group is ongoing. Like, how are you handling fuel escalations? What are you doing with this? And it's people from Tampa, Florida, and Austin, Texas. And so we meet at conferences, and the more connections I make, the bigger my resource network is. So I don't do all this alone. I mean, I am alone because I'm the only person at the port, but I have a vast network of people that I just literally reach out to. And so I'm always willing to share what I've learned, because I know that everyone's going to be sharing back with me. And they have saved me headache, heartache, and a lot of hours. And just being able to, here's a template I've used before, and be able to move on from there. So it's a really tight community of public procurement officials. Yeah,
no kidding. Lisa, your sister says, you mentioned how much money is spent on the crane project, but the port does generate profit.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So the port is actually, while we are a government entity, we're a municipal corporation, which means that we generate money. We only get $5 million over $85 million budget from taxpayer money. And all of that goes 100% to the legacy cleanups that we are dealing with along the waterfront, because we've cleaned up all the upland, and now we're in water, cleaning all the sediment, the dirty sediment in the water. And that's a very expensive and very time consuming and lengthy process. The rest of it is completely generated by the port or grant funds. So some of these are grant. We received a $10 million federal grant to upgrade a wharf. So there's some other proceeds, but only a very small 7%, I think, of our budget is taxpayer money.
That's pretty amazing. It's basically it's self-sufficient for the most part. I mean, that's amazing. So would you describe the kind of that industry as being sort of male dominated? Is that something that was kind of a factor as you were coming into it as well, like in a management position? And what's that like?
That's actually a really good question. Traditionally, historically, maritime has been very male dominated. Yeah. I would say in the last 10, 15 years, that has started to shift quite a bit. As far as the management goes, we do have like my CEO right now. So the way the ports are structured, we have a chief executive officer, and instead of like a mayor or anything like that, she's a female. She's the first female CEO for the Port of Everett ever. So the more recreational side of things tends to have a lot more female participation. The seaport side of things still tends to be a lot of male influence there, but there's quite a few female executives, not necessarily exactly at the port, but that has been traditionally more of a male dominated field. Yeah. So you're kind of in the middle of that, but yeah, we've talked about this before, and it's something that I guess it hasn't really, I don't know, maybe there's been some effects or whatever, but you've been able to kind of do your thing and continue your career. Yeah, I find everybody to be very incredibly helpful. And while there are a lot of men in the positions, they don't treat you any differently. They're very, in fact, sometimes they go out of their way to help you understand and learn. So that's me. I'm very curious. So as we're walking, doing a pre-bid, I'm asking the project managers and the operations guys, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean in there? They take the time to answer the questions, because the better you know something, the more help you're going to be to them in the future. Yeah, I think that in a position like where you are,
having a lot of curiosity and being able to, ask questions and try to learn is just a huge benefit.
It can also get you into trouble. You go bird walking someplace and realize you're not doing your job and you need to come back.
That's true. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. It's easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff. You are president of the Washington chapter of the Institute for Public Procurement, which is, I guess, the whole state of Washington. It's public procurement. It's not just for ports. This is like for anything public.
Yeah, this is
related.
Cities, counties, health departments. So there's the Institute for Public Procurement, which is nationwide, and then it's broken into chapters. And Washington State is one chapter. So we have about 300 members. And so I served as vice president last year and then president this year of that association.
Yeah. So that's part of your network, as you were talking about, where you can kind of reach out to them and get ideas.
And this is my way of giving back too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been blessed by so many people who've invested in me that it's time to volunteer and bring that to the others. So
let's talk about the supply chain issues. So why'd you screw everything up a couple of years ago?
Well, since we had so much power on all of them.
Right. No, so I've only heard bits and pieces, read articles here and there, but you're actually living it. You're like in the middle of it. So I've heard people say that a lot of times the stuff got to us, but it's just sitting in ports and it's not being unloaded. First off, why is that? Or is that true? And then why? Why can't they be unloaded? Like, what was the issue there?
Yeah, there's probably it's very complex. So I'm going to give you a couple reasons why that may be, and it may not be the reasons for their particular item.
Yeah.
But some of it has to do with labor shortages. So I can only speak to the West Coast Longshore Union. I'm not very familiar with any other area, but when COVID hit, Washington State was a fairly locked down state.
We were
compared to a lot of other states. Our longshore. So longshore are not hired by the port. They're hired by stevedoring companies out of a union hall.
Okay.
And some of them tend to work routinely on our ports, but others not so much. They travel. And so one of the challenges was they put a travel restriction in. And so you were only we only were able to utilize the longshore who were out of our own hall.
Yeah.
And so if they were sick and had to quarantine, or if they had, multiple shifts, we would have to just stop because we had nobody else to work.
Really?
And so that's part of it. I mean, that's one little piece of it, but that did definitely.
You just couldn't get someone else in from.
They wouldn't let us have them travel. I mean, you could have longshore sitting in their house in a port that didn't maybe have shipping, but they weren't able to then come over and help. That made it really challenging.
What do longshoremen do?
So longshore, that's a really good question. Longshoremen are the workers, the dock workers who offload ships. And so they not only offload ships, but they also then load all that cargo either by rail or back into the water. Some of the cargo we offload actually goes right back into the water. It's big yachts, it's various things. We just plop them right in. But otherwise it's either loaded onto truck or by rail. And so that's what longshore workers do.
Yep.
And then our own
need them.
crews. We do need them. Our own crews maintain all the infrastructure and the equipment.
Right.
And so these are all contracted individuals. And so we're pretty much at the mercy of whatever the local union says is, and they had put a work restriction or a travel restriction.
Right.
In some of the bigger ports, it got even more challenging. If you go to the Port of LA, the Port of LA has obviously multiple terminals.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, many of those terminals are still manually operated, as far as they still have clipboards and pieces of paper. These are not automated terminals where they're scanning barcodes and getting things out. So you have lack of workers. You have maybe not the best, as things are coming in and fast and furious, you may not be able to even find some of the stuff. But then also it's just maybe not trucks available, or especially and more the truckers would know this better than I do, but it's my understanding that if you're picking up cargo from a terminal, you don't get paid unless you have your cargo. So you could sit in line for 12 hours. And if you never pick up your cargo, you never pick up your cargo and you don't get paid for that day.
Oh man.
And therefore there's a lot of truckers who just refused to even work with like a Port of
because
LA
they didn't
or
want to
any of
sit
that,
there for the delay.
You could sit there for 3 days waiting to get your cargo. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a multiple, and then there's distribution centers, and then there's, you know, issues of the distribution centers. So there's just, it's just a very complex.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that's why they call it a chain. There's just so many different pieces of it.
Exactly. And then one of the things that was challenging for us is that we have our customs district has two customs agents. When Boeing, as a result of this, cut back from 5 plane sets a month to 2, they took away one of our customs agents, which means we can only bring cargo out during the hours that one customs agent is working.
Are you serious? One all together, not one at a time.
For the whole agents. Yeah, for the whole
thing.
Yeah, so ours is monitored remotely, and then they can come if it flags. They run them through radiation portal monitors.
Yeah.
But so what we did is we negotiated with customs, and we have our legislators working on this. I'm still paying for I'm paying for a dedicated customs agent for the Port of Everett. So we negotiated and said we'll fund their salary, but they need to be there. We can't possibly work. We've got trucks lined up on West Marine View Drive, which is the main road leading into the terminals.
Yeah.
And it's blocking traffic, and no one's able to. We've got all these longshore waiting to load trucks, but there's no customs agent on duty.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a fragile point of the system where one person is just like blocking the whole thing. And I didn't even think about sort of the national security implications of your job, because there's like, you're bringing in random containers and boxes and whatever else from other countries. What's in there, what's possibly being brought into our country.
Right. So all of our staff are trained on human trafficking awareness and understanding of that, including us as admin staff. And then all cargo exiting the terminal have to go through a radiation portal monitor. And so if we have a lot of trucks, like one day last week, we had 256 trucks circling through the terminals being loaded and moved out. Yep. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have to go through a radiation portal monitor and then then they get weighed, they get weighed when they come in, they get weighed when they leave, and then that kind of closes the loop. Yeah. That really backs things up. So I'm actually working with the Office of Weapons of Mass Destruction.
Wait, that's cool one. That's seriously the name?
That's the name. Yeah. So Kendra, that might be a cool name, but to get additional radiation portal monitors, and that's quite a process to go through. And so I'm trying to secure up to 4 additional radiation portal monitors. Yeah. So those are mainly looking for
nuclear weapons, I would assume, right? Like
that's anything that has radiation. Yeah. Nuclear dirty weapons bombs, for sure. Mm-hmm.
But
and they're very accurate.
What about drugs? Like, is there drug smuggling that happens and all that?
I'm sure there is. One of the benefits of being a break bulk port is that you don't have as many containers. And so it's a lot harder to get it into big pieces of steel and, some of that. Yeah. But we have not had to. So while we are our own terminal, we do have oversight from the U.S., from Department of Defense, as well as Department of Homeland Security. And then anything that's enforced is enforced with for that type of stuff with the U.S. Coast Guard. Okay. So we all have to have transportation worker identification credentials, which is a huge background check that we have to have with the federal government. And it's a $10,000 fine if you don't have it on you when you are on the terminals, personally to you. Mm-hmm. They take it very seriously. So you have to show your badge when you go in and take it out. Yeah.
So you do all kinds of other things. We're kind of running out of time here, so I'll try to keep it short. You're working with Snohomish County for some things like PUD, Infrastructure Coordination Committee. You even narrate harbor tours. Is that right?
I'm telling you, it's the bottom of the funnel.
Wow. So if I went up there and was like, hey, I want a tour, you're going to be the tour guide?
I am one of them. I only have to do, this year I'm only doing one during the summer. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So we kind of rotate staff through. There's about 5 or 6 of us. So we'll take it on an evening. There's 6 or 8 of them during the summer on Thursday nights. And I've
never thought about taking a tour of like a port, but that would be
$3.
fascinating. Yeah, I would do that.
$3, and it's a harbor tour, like I said. So we take a ferry, a small ferry, and we go along the Snohomish River. So you get to see the naval station from the other side, and then no one can really enter where our terminals are unless you have permission from the Navy, because it's a federally secured channel there. Yeah. And so like if you're on a pleasure boat, you're never going to get up close to our terminal. You're going to get escorted by the Navy out, because they don't want you in their territory, not because of us, but because they don't want you there, because they're a patrol boat. So that's one of the few opportunities for the public to actually get into that harbor is via our harbor tours. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, just two more questions and then we'll call it. But what are the best parts of the job for you?
For me, I have to say, well, as you can tell, I might like people and I like to talk. But that's it. The people aspect, the ability to learn new things every day, all the time. So every time I have a new project, you're learning something new. And I work with incredibly great people who are just fantastic. So to me, it's that sense of community and just really being able to continually learn.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what's not so great about the job?
Everyone has that invisible work that no one wants to talk about or do, and no one even knows happens. But there's a lot of compliance that goes with my job, and that is not my thing. I do it because I have to. Some of the things I have to force compliance on, I don't agree with. And so those are the challenges that we have to face at times, is having to balance. I really try to balance being a trusted partner with the enforcement side of my job. And so working with people, knowing that humans make mistakes, we all do. It takes people 5 to 7 times to learn a process before they, feel comfortable with it. So trying to bring that aspect to the fact that you didn't quite do it the way it's actually legal what you did. So let's undo what you did, but let's try and retrain you instead of being punitive. And so I'd rather reinforce positive behavior. But
that makes sense.
That's the tough part of the job, is just working with people on those aspects.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Maija. It's awesome to have you on. And it's like, I feel like, all of these jobs, I found this fascinating. Like there's a lot for you. It's just sort of like everyday life. You've been doing it for a while, but for the rest of us, we only see a port maybe if we're driving by one, that's about it. Or if we notice that, hey, our local store doesn't have something, it might be like supply chain issue. That's it. But it's cool to see sort of like the day-to-day stuff that you deal with and how you got into that position and everything. Chuck Bilkus says, very interesting. Thank you, Maija and Jamin. And Linda says, great show. Really appreciate it from all of you tuning in as well. I did get one last question I'll sneak in here by one of our previous interviewees, Mark Johnson. He says, hi, Maija, did the price of container shipments from China and other places go up 10 times during COVID, but is now more stabilized?
That is true. So it used to be about $3,000 a container. It went up to $25,000 per container. So that just adds to the issues that we've been having. No one can absorb that. Yeah. And so that's been a challenge, as well as the deep freeze down in the South with the petrochemical plants. That has been another source of inflation and issues that we've had. So definitely went up. Now it's down and stabilized for sure. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Sarah West says, thank you. Jerry Roberts, thank you so much. So interesting. Linda Impola, great interview and interviewee. Appreciate that, everybody. I don't know. I don't have everything totally lined up for my next interview. I've been sick and whatnot, so it's been kind of throwing everything off. I'll just blame it on supply chain issues and my cousin Maija. But I do have a lot of other very interesting people who will be coming, some people in aerospace, military, even potentially someone who's in the Space Force. I want to actually tease that a little bit. I've not actually locked that one down yet, but I want to tease it. There's some other stuff happening, but can't guarantee it'll happen every Friday, but we're going to try to do that. Of course, send out the YouTube link to people who aren't on Facebook who might be interested in watching these. I did actually make those public now. Finally, I had them private, but it was kind of becoming a problem because people couldn't find stuff. So just want to let everybody know that. Thanks again to Maija.
Really appreciate it. And we'll see you all next time.
Take care.